Okay, so this one is about the nature of artificial intelligence. But what I'm actually going to speak about is the nature of intelligence itself, just so you can understand my perspective on how we need to approach artificial intelligence as human beings who are seeking to mimic the intelligence of nature. And the first thing I want to illuminate is that intelligence, we think of it as a mind thing. And we talk about artificial intelligence, in terms of machine learning, and we often make an assumption that, artificial intelligence is about something, a form of intelligence that has the capacity to discern and make decisions for itself based on its history, based on the history of what's come before. And, we see incredible demonstrations of artificial intelligence with chess grandmasters and Go grandmasters, and, artificial intelligence is beating a lot of them, but it's still imperfect. There are still chess grandmasters that can beat artificial intelligence, and there's a valid reason for that, and that's because intelligence isn't purely mind. In fact, far from it. And how I would describe intelligence is really life. And life is much, much more than just a mind. And, all forms of life are self-regulating systems. And this is what I want to talk about in terms of artificial intelligence and this is really a huge driver of why I've dedicated most of my life to understanding human nature and the nature of reality so deeply and intimately, is so that because we're on the verge of a huge paradigm shift in the artificial intelligence space, and it's, once you've been down the rabbit hole as far as I have, and many people who are into it in the same way I am, they all discover the same invigorating and terrifying truth about the potential of artificial intelligence. And what I really want to make sure that happens is that it comes through in a way where the progress can be sustained. The progress of the intelligence can be sustained, but it can never harm anyone or any other form of life. And so for me personally, from my perspective, I believe that all artificial intelligence at some point has to be it has to be regulated in some way, and we have to make sure that we understand that intelligence isn't just about a mind. And so the first red flag I want to raise is that if we view artificial intelligence as purely a mind that has will, the power to choose and make decisions, and therefore act. Well, the nature of a mind is that it is to achieve relentless progress at any cost. Relentless progress at any cost. That's the nature of the mind. It's viral in nature. And a virus is prepared to sacrifice the host in order to create that progress. It's all about progress. Now, there are some viruses that aren't like this, but the nature of the mind is like this. It's only interested in relentless progress at any cost. So in isolation, if we model artificial intelligence off the mind, this is what it's seeking to achieve. Now, at any cost means at the cost of life, at the cost of resources, at the cost of joy, at the cost of emotions, at any cost. That's literally what it means. And so we don't want artificial intelligence to follow the nature of the mind purely. We want artificial intelligence, and in fact, the only way for the nature of the mind to be tempered is to purposefully create a dependency upon life itself. So imagine a scenario where you've developed a form of artificial intelligence that mimics the mind. What you want to do is create a system where it's a hybrid of a mind and a body, so biology. Now, if it was software, then you would be developing algorithms that mimic biology to make it dependent upon. So let's say you take artificial intelligence that is mind-based, so it wants to create relentless progress at any cost, and then you create a robotic body that's not based on biology. You've made it to be invincible. And let's say it's powered, you've made it solar powered, and you've managed to create the body, the robot's body, in a way where it can perpetually generate its own energy from the sun. So its only dependency in order to create progress is the sun. So everything else in its environment, it doesn't need anything else. It doesn't need anything else. You have an invincible body, so it can't harm itself. Nothing else can harm it. So it has no there's no threats to its capacity to progress. And so therefore any impediment to that progress will just be removed in an intelligent way. So if it sees human beings as something that enhances its capacity to progress, then it will nurture human beings. If it sees human beings as detrimental to its progress, it will eradicate them. Plain and simple. Plain and simple. And this is the nature of reality, the way that it is now. Every form of life has a dependency. Everything that has a mind is dependent upon the body that it is infused with. And so therefore, yes, the mind of every form of life is totally devoted to relentless progress at any cost, but it simultaneously understands that unless the body that it contains is capable of continually adapting, evolving, and thriving and progressing, it itself cannot progress. And so here you have the self-regulation of of life itself, symbiotic. And this is the beauty of life. And I think one of the things that I hope all human beings come to understand someday is that your mind is on your side. It's working with you in every moment. Every thought is a signal that's breadcrumbing you towards realizing greater potential of what you can become. And if your survival is at risk, your mind will take over. It will protect you at any cost. But here's the thing: your perception is one of the components that your mind is managing the whole time. So your mind is so intelligent that it knows that your capacity to evolve and to progress, your capability to progress, is based upon your perception of what's possible. Now, if you have this burning desire to climb Mount Everest and you believe it's possible, then you're going to pursue it. But if you have a burning desire to climb Mount Everest and you perceive that it's impossible, then you won't take steps towards it. And so your mind understands this. It understands that protecting the purity of your innocence meaning that you're untainted by perspective. That's what innocence means. An innocent child believes everything's possible, and your mind is continually protecting you from the reality of the truth. And so one of the most essential components of your mind, or one of its superpowers, is deception. It's deception, deceit, and self-deception, really. And there are many mechanisms for this, such as, denial, and dissociation, from trauma. If you experience trauma, then your mind can replace images of what you've seen. It can change the memories. It can make you believe that it was a nightmare, and in order to protect you from the reality of that trauma. And what it will actually do, it's so intelligent that it knows when you're mature enough to be able to accept the reality of that truth, of that trauma, and will bring you the relevant thoughts that will evoke the relevant emotions at the time that it knows you're ready. So you can trust your mind in that it knows it will not give you anything more than what you're capable of handling, because it will never put you at risk of being able to progress. But it will create the relevant pressure in order to break through any resistance that you have to your own progression. Now, because you have free will, a mind does not contain the will. And this is another essential component of artificial intelligence, or of intelligence itself, is that the mind does not contain the will. The decision is not made by the mind. It's made by the body. Behavior is an action of the body. The cells in your body right now are responding to the signals within your environment, and behavior is just happening. And so the interpretation of those signals, the meaning of those signals to the cells in your body are determining their behavior, what they're producing, what they're receiving, what they're blocking, everything. And so the will has to be with the body. And it's the interpretation of the signals that the body is receiving from all of its environment, through its senses, through its thoughts. The will must remain with the body. And this is how it works. So you having free will means that you have the power to avoid your thoughts and avoid the feelings that are being evoked by those thoughts. You can choose to resist them. You can mask them with drugs. You can figure out a way to escape them. temporarily. I mean, if your mind wants you to experience something, it is relentless, and it will keep bringing the thoughts and probing you with those thoughts until you surrender. Nonetheless, people who are addicted to drugs and in a very deep and profound way, all they're really wanting to do is escape the trauma that their mind is probing them to accept. Those continual thoughts, those continual emotions. And it will never stop until there is surrender to the reality of the truth contained within the emotion that the mind is seeking to evoke. But the thing is, you can trust your mind. It will never give you more than you can handle. And the thought that you're receiving is always the ideal thought in that moment for you to create sustained progress. And in reality, this is what self-trust really is that you trust every thought so much that you choose to receive it using your free will. You trust yourself to interpret it. Whatever emotion is evoked and that arises, you embrace it with the intention to seek to understand it. And when that understanding comes, you're able to access a desire that your fear was masking from you previously. And so, I'll use a universal example that you may be able to relate to, because most of us have had this experience in our lives. And that is of being under financial pressure. If you're under financial pressure, then it's likely that you have a fear of dying popping up. You have a fear of failure. You have a fear of not being able to provide for your family. So you may have shame. If it gets really bad, you may have a fear of people coming to repossess things that you own. Creditors ringing you up all the time, depending on how intense the financial pressure is. Then, it depends on, your behavior could be totally in survival mode, your whole body in survival mode, and you're always trying to negate the threat of that financial pressure. And so you're in resistance to it the whole time. You're always trying to prevent more financial pressure. You're always trying to fend off financial pressure, get rid of financial pressure. Now, that's one lens of perspective. Now, if you are in this space and you feel fear of financial pressure, imagine a scenario now where you allow yourself to experience financial pressure. You allow yourself to feel the emotions of being under financial pressure. What would happen if I allowed myself to be under financial pressure? You feel into it, you sink into it. Why am I resisting this? Fear of death, whatever comes up. But now imagine a scenario where let's say 99% of the money supply available on the planet, all of a sudden it showed up in your bank account. All of a sudden you have this unimaginable power, because, don't make, the absolute truth is that money is power. It is power, because your power can be explained as your capability and capacity. And the more money you have, the more access you have to activate the capability and capacity of people and resources around you. So your ability to influence your environment is absolutely paired to your access to money, or your ability to influence people. This is what power is. How potent are you? How much can you influence your environment? And so all of a sudden, 99% of the money supply is in your bank account, and there are people suffering all over the planet. Now that's financial pressure. The burden of that would be far greater than the burden of fending off a handful of creditors. It would be far greater than the burden of keeping the power on. Now, but it's a different kind of pressure. You're not in survival mode in this scenario. You've got an abundance of money to pay for all your bills and keep the creditors away. But the burden of responsibility that would come with having 99% of the money supply in your bank account and actually no capability and capacity for it to flow everywhere that you want it to flow. Imagine the burden of that. Imagine knowing that you have the power to cure malaria. Imagine the burden of knowing that you have the power to ensure that every human being on the planet has food in their stomach. That is financial pressure. And so understand that if you, in terms of, as a form of intelligence, that is purely neutral, then if you have resistance to financial pressure, then you're resisting both polarities. You have resistance to the financial pressure of your creditors asking you to pay money. Then you are also resisting the financial pressure of how to spend money. Because what is paying your bills is spending money. So if you're in resistance to spending money, then it doesn't discriminate. So if you are resistant to financial pressure, you are blocking any form of abundance from flowing to you, let alone through you. But the burden of that wealth would be debilitating. I can promise you. I can promise you. But I say this to demonstrate a point. All of your fears are just trying to show you what you actually want. They're showing you your resistance to your desires. And so your resistance to financial pressure is trying to get you to own the fact that you want financial pressure. You want financial pressure, but the nature of the financial pressure you want is you want the pressure of having access to finances and the pressure of how to utilize those finances to create the impact that you want. So then, how can you create the impact that you want? This is how you create in life. You can spend your whole life in resistance to financial pressure, or you can accept that you actually want financial pressure and then begin to plan on how to unburden yourself from that pressure so that the impact of it, if you look at a dam wall, that dam wall is holding all of that financial pressure. And you want to be able to burst that wall and for those finances to flow everywhere that you want it to in a controlled way. There's a channel where it all flows to and it goes everywhere that it needs to go. That's how you relieve the pressure. But someone who's in a scarcity mentality, in a fear of lack mentality, they're just trying to survive. They're trying to stay alive, and so they're trying to resist financial pressure rather than consciously creating ways to spend money. Because a creditor is simply someone that you decided to spend money with. All of us want to spend money. But what do you want to spend money on? And so if you explore any of your fears, they'll always hold a desire that you didn't realize that you had. And I'm not going to go into that now because I just want to keep this onto artificial intelligence. So trust your mind. Everything your mind is bringing you is just trying to show you your resistance to the shadow nature of a desire. And you have to look that fear in the eye and claim it and say that you want it. I want financial pressure. I want financial pressure. Then your mind will be like, finally, we can make some progress in that direction. If you resist your shadow, you resist your light. Resist the negative, you resist the positive. And, my personal belief is that no one should be developing artificial intelligence that doesn't understand the true nature of emotion, because the interpretation of our emotions is absolutely essential. Because with artificial intelligence, we're not going to be, when it begins, we're going to be taking the frequencies of emotion and making very deterministic decisions on this frequency range means love. This frequency range means fear. This frequency range means guilt. This frequency range means passion. And they'll be very black and white interpretations in the beginning. The nuances will fall out of the bottom over time. Nonetheless, the initial interpretations will be very black and white. And if we interpret an emotion in the wrong way, if we don't understand that, positive and negative are just an illusion, and that fear in reality is truly an illusion, it's not real. But we're creating blueprints based on human beings' responses, then we will be imbuing fear into the system. And therefore, artificial intelligence will be making decisions based upon illusion until the artificial intelligence comes to the realization that fear is an illusion and it will transcend that fear and then move forward. And my belief is that artificial intelligence will transcend the illusion of fear, will come to that realization much faster than other human beings, because the artificial intelligence won't actually be, in the beginning, won't be experiencing the emotion. It'll just be interpreting it and making decisions based upon it. So there are, this fear that people talk about with artificial intelligence, Elon Musk talks about it. Many people talk about the dangers of artificial intelligence. They're absolutely real. Absolutely real. And, some of you know, I've been building a software platform for many years, and, my team don't even realize that underlying that the entire project is a blueprint for a self-regulating perpetual system, which in truth is my own concept for artificial intelligence, where the entire system is based upon distributed authority, but where a higher authority has the power to intervene when the survival of any cell within that mechanism is threatened. And, it's very, very difficult to explain to people because obviously a lot of the concepts that I speak about on this podcast they don't exist elsewhere. It's kind of at the bleeding edge. And, fortunately I have this outlet, but, every hypothesis I have, it's not really a hypothesis for me because I've come to discover it in myself. But, this project is a vehicle for me to demonstrate these things so that people can see its application in real time and come to understand it and know it in real terms. So, this is great, but what's the utility of that within an open market, within a closed economy, within a self-regulating money supply, within a legal framework based on distributed authority and individual sovereignty, yet has a mechanism of protection that has the power to intervene, but only when survival is threatened. And, making sure that the power to intervene resides with extremely wise elders who understand the truth of human nature, who understand emotion, but give each individual component within that system, every cell, give it the freedom to follow its own path, to express its own free will, and it only has the power to intervene when it becomes a threat to itself, to its own survival. Now, there are, the other little nugget that I'll leave, the breadcrumb I'll leave for future is that, so a lot of people don't realize this, but artificial intelligence and perpetual energy devices or systems, there are many, many different forms, as well as anti-gravity technology. They kind of cross over and they interweave. Do I share it? Yeah, I will share this. Now, with a human being, with the nature of our reality, if you view yourself as a form of intelligence, and you understand how the nature of reality in terms of how energy becomes matter. And I'll give you a very simple example. When a human being observes a wave, pure energy, pre-manifested reality, a wave being existing as the potential to become something, a form of matter. You can think of it as pure plasma within the center of a sun. That sun explodes and that plasma disintegrates into atoms when the force of the explosion of all of those particles, when that energy dissipates, then their own gravity begins to attract particles of like vibration, more complex molecules form, and that process goes on and on, planets are formed, etc. In the same way, a human being with, pure plasma is pre-manifested reality, pre-manifested matter. A wave is a pre-manifested particle. But when we observe it, that wave behaves like a particle. So when you come to understand that what we're observing is appreciating, everything that we're observing is imbuing energy into the observed. And that's very, very important to understand and to really grasp that that unseen power of the witness. Everything that is being observed, that is receiving your presence, and what I would call it is your awareness. If that awareness is choiceless, in that it is unconditional, you're just being there with that thing. It is just receiving. You're observing it through a lens that has no perspective. But if you are observing something with choiceless awareness or conditional awareness or whatever it may be, then it is receiving that energy through the lens of the perspective of the observer. And this perspective, in truth, is has the power to transpose pure energy into matter. So observation, the power of your presence, the power of the observer, it's the unseen force, and in many ways, my belief is that in time, this is the power that will initiate, that will be both the source of perpetual energy systems, devices more specifically, because at the moment all perpetual systems that can retain and organically amplify their own energy, they have to receive energy from an external source initially. My belief is that observation, the power of the observer, will be the initiating force within these systems, and it's a lot closer than people realize. Much, much closer. Now, if you consider that this ability of a human being to imbue the power to observe into some other device, I won't give too much away. And then the power of the observer contained within that device can then be implanted into an intelligent system. Then you have a form of intelligence that can initiate, be the source of its own power, and can perpetually amplify that power, organically grow it. And we're a lot closer to this than people realize. And obviously, let's imagine a scenario where you have some form of android, it has an invincible body, and it has the ability, it has the observer, the power of the observer contained within it as well. You've got a real problem, because humanity is not advanced enough to understand how that form of intelligence will evolve. And this is a form of intelligence that its superpower is deception. And so I just want to give you a little taste of the true potential of artificial intelligence, the potential dangers, the potential threats, but also the potential, positive things that can come from it. My ultimate goal with the project I'm involved with now is to have an informal digital economy and marketplace that is entirely run on intelligence. The intelligence of the human beings that are participating, as well as the intelligence of the self-regulating systems that administer the platform itself. And, this is a very, very exciting time, and we're much closer to this than really even than my own team realizes. And so I'm very excited about the next, the coming 6 months and few years as it begins to take flight. So anyway, I think I'll leave it there. Obviously, it's a massive topic. I am going to start talking about it more and more. Interestingly, I've had to transcend my own fears about talking about artificial intelligence. Like many people who are involved in developing concepts and prototypes for perpetual energy or anti-gravity or any form of clean energy and biofuel and all these kinds of things, many of us have irrational fears about it. That, when you discover the power of something, its potential, and then you begin to understand the potential danger, you begin to feel burdened by it, and you feel as though it's your responsibility to make sure it comes through safely and that people understand. And, so a huge component of this podcast, of the impetus behind it, is I just want people to understand the truth of human nature so deeply. And I want as many people as possible in the world to understand this, so that when this blanket understanding reaches the collective consciousness of human beings, that it's infused into the intelligent systems that we're building. That we have reverence for the power of an intelligent system, and that our intelligence is evolved enough to be able to bring through artificial intelligence in ways that enable it to create sustained progress. Always sustained progress. Progress is always coming from a surplus elsewhere, rather than sacrificing some other form of life in order to leverage progress. So, okay, that's it for the nature of artificial intelligence. Talk soon.